When the church decided to make Mother Teresa into a saint, they called a witness against her, a devil's advocate, so to speak, and his name was Christopher Hitchens. And when I heard this, I thought, this is amazing, because Christopher Hitchens is such a good arguer. He's such a good debater, and he hates Mother Teresa. He's written a book called The Missionary Position, and it talks about how bad Mother Teresa was. Now, I bring this up because we had this argument, right? Why is it true for almost every metric that the black population is worse off than the white population? And then we had these three possibilities. Well, don't we want to get the devil's advocate for number two? Do we just want to write it off and say, oh, this is racist? Or do we really want someone who will push back on this? And I have just the fellow for you. His name is Charles Murray. He wrote this book called The Bell Curve. Now, if you think that Charles Murray is going to tell you that all of the difference between black and white people are genetic, because the black people are genetically inferior to white people, I'm going to have to say you're going to be disappointed, because he's not going to say that. But he is going to say some other stuff. So let's do a quick talk about the bell curve. So this is his famous book, infamous book, The Bell Curve. And I want to talk about what his thesis in this book. So his thesis in this book was, well, let me give you the two things that he believes. And many people argue about these two things, but we're just going to say these two things are true. Number one, intelligence is genetic. Smart parents, on average, have smarter kids than dumb parents. So, intelligence, so by the way, that means intelligence is innate. If it's genetic, it's going to be innate. And he says, we don't know how much of it's genetic, but he says somewhere between 40% and 80%. Okay? We don't know. But if that's true, he says, and if intelligence helps us to become successful in everything, and he has all these different things that he shows how intelligence makes people more successful, but especially in financial success. If intelligence is a factor, not the thing. Of course, we all know smart people who don't have any money, and we know dumb people with lots of money. But if one of the big factors for financial success is intelligence, he argues, and this is his thesis of this book, that we're going to have a society, and this is a bad thing, he says, we're going to have a society that has a top 10-20% of very smart people. Because, see, the smart people will be marrying other smart people that they meet at college, and then they're going to be having children, and those children are going to be smart. And even if you think that intelligence is environmental, they're going to be rich, so they're going to be able to hire tutors, which will make these kids smart. If you believe that, we don't know. And then on the bottom of society, we're going to have people who are not smart, because, see, the smart ones will bubble up. And so you're going to have lots of not smart people. And even if intelligence is more environmental, you're going to have poor folk who can't afford to help educate their kids. And he says we're going to have become a very tight top and a very tight bottom. And they're not going to change, he says. And this is a bad thing for America. Now, that's the quick and dirty version of it. Not dirty version, but, you know, there's a whole lot of stuff that I'm not telling you that he says. But, and this is what he gets in trouble for. How much time do I have? Oh, I'm doing well. This is what he gets in trouble for the bell curve. He talks about this, and he says, in the first half, he only talks about white people. And then one chapter he says, look, okay, we could talk about this and completely ignore race and only look at white people. And this would be true, he says. And by the way, after he writes this book, he writes another book where he just looks at white people and makes the same thesis. But he says we have to look at African Americans because they make up so much of the poverty. You can't talk about poverty and say, oh, and by the way, we're not going to talk about African Americans because just because. So Charles Murray pokes a wasp's hornet. And let me just show you a quick picture from his thing. Let's see if you can see this. Does it focus well? Is it focusing? I can't see if it's focusing. Anyway, look. This is, according to Charles Murray. Let's see if it focuses. According to Charles Murray, there's a 15-point difference between the white median average of intelligence and the black average. Again, we're not talking about individuals. I've got this wonderful picture of an obituary. This is of course Katherine Goebel Johnson, the famous NASA mathematician. The movie just came out. She just died at the age of 101. Super smart African American woman, for crying out loud. He says, of course, that there are smart black people. There's smart white people. In fact, there's more dumb white people than there are dumb black people, just because there's more. I should have shown you that. I'll show it to you here. Look. See, this is, if you took this one, but did it by population, it would look more like this. So, this is a hornet's nest, and the truth of the matter is, no matter what metric you look at, there is a huge gap between the testing of black folk and the testing of white folk. And the question is, why is that? Now, Charles Murray does not say it's 40 to 80% genetics. That's for each individual. We don't know the difference between the distribution of black folk and white folk. Maybe that's all environmental. Now, he's going to argue that it's probably not all environmental, and we'll pick up on that argument next time. So again, he's not saying it's 40 to 80% genetic between the different populations. He's saying that for individuals it's 40 to 80%. We don't know why there's such a gap. And again, people will argue lots of things against him. But we'll pick this up and talk about why. Is it possible that there is a genetic difference between population groups? We're not going to call them races, of course. They're population groups. So we'll pick that up next time.